Yo, what is up, everybody? It's your boy Xehther here, back with What If Deku Was Deadshot?
Whoa, Weeb, what are you doing here?
What do you mean? This is my channel.
No, it's not.
Oh shit, we've been spotted. Gotta go.
Okay, so, yeah, like he said, we're gonna be doing What If Deku Was Deadshot. Alright, guys, that was a little bit of a That One Weeb cameo. Obviously, I planned it out, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe one of these days, me and That One Weeb can do a little bit of a Naruto collab. Maybe he can be part of the actual storytelling. Last time I collabed with him was What If Deku Was Astro Boy, which that series never finished because it got like borderline no views. But that being said though, guys, yeah, today Deadshot Deku. I hope you guys go on to enjoy it. If you do, guys, make sure to smash that like button. Texas smash it with your nose. See if you can do that. See if you can Texas smash it with your nose. If you can, then maybe comment that down below. Oh, and also funniest comment down below will also get pinned for the video. So with that being said, comment away. And with that being said as well, let's get into the what if. Okay, so we start off our story when Deku was born. Now, in this version of events, when Deku was born, he's still going to be looking exactly how he did in canon. The only real change to the story is that in this version of events, Hisashi is not going to be in the picture. He's not going to be the father of Izuku Midoriya. Instead, it's going to be somebody else, a pro hero by the name of Snipe. Now, a lot of you guys probably might have seen that coming. However, the reason for this is kind of just because of a little bit of a plot convenience. Snipe has a shooting quirk, and when it comes to what Deku's quirk is going to be, he's not going to be having some marksman type quirk. It's actually going to be something a lot different. Instead, think of Granola from Dragon Ball Super. If any of you guys have been keeping up with the manga for that stuff, he basically has an ability that lets him see things. All right, pretty much think Hyuga Dojutsu. All right, Hyuga Dojutsu. They can see really far. They can see blood flow, bones, all that crazy stuff. Deku pretty much can do that. And yeah, it's a pretty broken quirk when you pair it up with somebody like Deadshot, whose sole little thing is being a marksman. So yeah, it's definitely going to be helpful later down the road when Deku finally develops into the person he will come to be. However, that being said, Snipe isn't going to be in the picture either. See, when it comes to his and Inko's relationship, it would have actually been a little bit of a rocky one, where towards the end of it, when he found out that Inko got pregnant, he kind of just abandoned her, left her, gave her no money, and Inko, not wanting to be a bother to Snipe, seeing as he was a pro hero, just let it happen. She had Deku a couple of months later, and Deku was then born. After this, Inko was pretty much forced to go on and be a single mom, raising Deku the only way that she knew how to, by getting 3 part-time jobs and working a countless amount of hours during the week. And Deku would grow up getting bullied just like he does in canon. However, he would have a semi-normal life until he's about 4 years old. Because Deku is going to be struggling a little bit financially with his mother when it comes to money and the food that he eats. He's a pretty skinny and skinny kid. He's a little skinnier than he was in canon because he doesn't exactly get the proper food that he does. However, once he starts going to school and gets his little snacks at school, he starts slowly getting some of his body mass where it should be, where Deku would finally start getting to know people such as Bakugo and Bakugo's little lackeys, as well as the rest of his classmates. Now, for the first couple of months of preschool, Deku actually has a great time. Deku meets a couple of people, and Bakugo is one of the people who Deku becomes pretty close friends with. When it comes to Mitsuki and Inko, they're not exactly going to be friends in this version of events because of the fact that Inko's always working. She doesn't have the time to be making friendships or any of that stuff. Inko's always busting herself to pretty much provide for Deku and herself. And so we would honestly just have Deku slightly getting neglected, not purposefully, but by Inko, because sometimes she simply does not have the time nor the energy to make food for them. And so preschool is a good thing for Deku. It's a place where Deku gets to go and forget all about those problems. Although Deku's young, he understands what's going on around himself. And so Deku would basically just hang out in preschool until one day Bakugo awakens his quirk, where Bakugo basically starts to bully Deku every single day, telling him that he's quirkless, that he's never going to be getting his quirk. And Deku, one day, he's actually going to be a late bloomer, but one day when Deku was about 5 years old, Deku ends up unlocking his quirk. Doctors had previously said that he does have the bone in the joint of his pinky toe, so he's probably going to be a late bloomer, and so that's exactly what he was. After getting bullied for a couple of months, being told that he's quirkless, when Deku finally comes back to school with the news that he actually does have a quirk, he just unlocked it. He would show the class, and the class would just be like, "That's kind of weak." They would make fun of Deku's quirk, saying that that's all, his eyes are cool or whatever. People would just be like, "Oh, so like that one anime, Naruto." And some people would be like, "Yeah, that's kind of awesome." But Bakugo, kind of seeing this as like a threat to himself or his ego, would immediately shut everyone up, being like, "Yeah, I mean, he can see, but does that mean he still has all the rest of the abilities? Does he have jutsu or any of that stuff? No, so he's still weak. You might as well be quirkless, Deku. That quirk of yours is not going to amount to a thing. I'm still going to become the greatest, and I'm still the strongest in the classroom." As everybody hears Bakugo say this, they all kind of nod, just being like, "Yeah, I mean, he's kind of right. He does have a point." As Bakugo just kind of smirks towards Deku's direction, and Deku just says, "Yeah, Bakugo, I agree with you. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to compete with you or anything." As Bakugo would grit his teeth, just thinking that Deku's always so good-hearted. This is when he would just basically get out of there, as, for the next following years, the Bakugo bullying would continue. It doesn't really help out with anything in the fact that, Bakugo is a little bit of a dickhead, you know what I mean? He's not exactly the best person. And so, when Deku grows up, instead of idolizing All Might, which, he's still going to do, he's still going to think that All Might's a great hero, but when it comes down to who his favorite hero would be, Deku's favorite hero would actually be, say it with me, guys. I'm pretty sure many of you guys can already guess who it's going to be. It's going to be Snipe. Alright, Snipe. Snipe is going to be Deku's favorite hero. And so, Deku is pretty much going to be watching Snipe's videos up until he's the age of 11, where Deku just thinks that he's awesome. I mean, that quirk of his is incredible. Deku's always had a fascination with guns and being a marksman in and of itself, because when Deku was growing up, Inko had a lot of those old movies that her dad used to watch, and her dad was really into that stuff. So Deku kind of just had that rub off on him from Inko's side of the family, or his grandfather. As from there, one day, Inko's father and Deku's grandfather, when he's 11 years old, would basically end up saying to Deku that if he wants to go hang out. As Deku would, of course, willing to go hang out with his grandfather. I mean, who wouldn't, Deku would basically hop in the car where his grandfather would take him over to a shooting range, where Deku would actually prove to be a natural gunman. When he steps in there and his grandfather shows him how to work a pistol, Deku would grab it as he would cock everything the way that he showed him, put in the ammunition, as he would just aim it, and immediately he would hit a perfect bullseye. As his grandfather's just like, "Whoa there, kid. Natural first time luck," or, no. What's it called? What's that expression that people use when they say that, you just get lucky because it's your first time? I don't know what the expression is, but please comment it down if you do know. That being said, he would say some cool remark about how, Deku's just getting beginner's luck. Yes, beginner's luck. There it is. And Deku would just smile as he would shoot another target and get another perfect bullseye. This is when his grandfather would say, "You're a natural." As he would say, "I mean, it took me all these years just to finally be able to do that one time when I concentrate a lot, but you're great, my boy." As he would ruffle Deku's hair up and Deku would smile at him. This is when his grandfather would say, "Now step out of the way. I'm going to show you how a real man does it." As he would grab another, a stage higher than a pistol and shoot it. And this is when he would basically end up getting the same result that Deku did, which actually impresses people that an old man is able to do that. This is when people would actually surround Deku, as Deku was given the same weapon that his grandfather just shot, and he would aim as he would hit another perfect bullseye. And they would then basically just keep advancing with the weapons until Deku finds out that he's a perfect natural. Deku doesn't really have to think much about what his shots are doing because of that quirk that he has. Deku has this thing that pretty much allows him to have a perfect aim. Not perfect aim, but it gives him a perfect view of anything that he wants to hit. Deku can pretty much like realize what it is that Deku wants to do, and he'll accomplish it by simply wanting to do it. And so anytime that Deku locks onto a certain point, Deku's not gonna miss. After this, we would then basically have everybody getting impressed at this, as he would practice for the next couple of years with multiple weapons, getting better and better. Also practicing his hand-to-hand combat and taking lessons, which he pays for by working a part-time job as a waiter. He started doing this as soon as he turned 12 years old, and he was able to work at his mother's restaurant, lying about his age, saying that he was 14. Seeing as Deku, I mean, he's just let slide because it's like, you know, they need workers and Deku's there. And so Deku pays for his own lessons. And Deku just continues to go to school, where he wouldn't use any of this stuff to, you know, basically harm anybody. He wouldn't ever stand up to Bakugo, and he would kind of just stray away from Bakugo, because after years of kind of just being ridiculed and told that he might as well be quirkless, Bakugo at one point kind of just took it too far, and Deku realized that staying next to a kid who's always going to bully him no matter what he does isn't the smartest. So Deku finally, realizing this, would just be like, yeah, I'm not gonna hang around Bakugo. And so that's pretty much all he does. He just stops hanging out with Bakugo. And so after this, we would just have Bakugo doing his own thing and Deku doing his own as well, as, you know, they're kind of just staying out of each other's lanes, and Bakugo's getting pretty happy at this. I mean, it's been such a long time since Deku's left him alone that he's pretty excited about the notion. And so we would essentially just have Deku being, you know, smiling as he finally starts living a normal life in high school, middle school, where he's at currently. And Deku is now going to be a confident 14 years old. Now, these last couple of years, as I said, recap, you know, he gets pretty good at shooting. He does a little bit of marksmanship and all that stuff. He gets pretty good hand-to-hand combat skills. And he and his mother are still struggling a little bit financially. They actually live in their grandmother and grandfather's house, because after a while, paying all these bills and Inko basically working all these jobs took a toll on her, and she wasn't able to keep working. So she basically ended up having to move back in with her parents with her son, where, you know, they've been living at for the past 3 years. And, you know, her grandfather's actually fine with it. Another mouth to feed and another kid to raise, you know what I mean? Deku is like his favorite. And so one day, Deku would, of course, just be going to school, where it would actually be around the point where, you know, like 3 months before the day where the teacher basically ends up saying that, oh, you know, I know you all want to become heroes and all that stuff, you know, all that crazy stuff. That being said, though, we would essentially just have Deku pretty much proceed to, go home. As on this particular day, he would pretty much just be in a little bit of a car ride with his grandfather. As, you know, they would be driving, and this is when a bunch of hero and villain incident would come in out of nowhere, as a car would get flung straight at the direction that Deku and his grandfather are in. Now the car would quite literally hit the side that his grandfather is at. As, you know, they were driving, you know, the light turned green, his grandfather pressed on it, but this is when a car just flew in and completely crushed and caved in the part of the car which his grandfather was in, causing his grandfather's blood to splatter everywhere all over Deku. And Deku, seeing this, eyes widen as he would just get flung, like literally spinning in circles inside of the car. As, you know, the heroes would basically just continue fighting the villain, just ignoring what just happened, as Deku would be forced to use nothing but his willpower to climb out of that car and get out of there before it explodes. As it would do that right as Deku would get out of there, and Deku's leg would catch on, not his leg, but his arm would catch on fire. This is when Deku would quite literally just begin to crawl out of there as he starts screaming, and a hero would rush over there, as it would actually be Manuel, the hero which Ida goes to during the Stain arc, as he would just shoot water at it, and Deku's arm would have permanent fourth degree burns. He would be rushed to the hospital, where this is where Deku would pretty much just have to get his arm amputated. Completely amputated. And so they have to give him this cybernetic arm, which Deku's going to basically have to live with. It's nothing crazy, nothing similar to the Winter Soldier, but something that just is useful for day-to-day use, you know what I mean? And so this would put Inko and Deku into a gigantic financial debt to the hospital, seeing as they didn't have any insurance. And so Deku and Inko, anytime they would get sick, they would simply have to rely on themselves, you know what I mean? Their own physical bodies being able to fight off these diseases or anything, anytime. And so we would just have Deku getting this like little robotic arm and always starting to wear hoodies as so to not draw attention to his arm. Also feeling horrible about the fact that he caused his mother all of this pain. And after this, we would essentially just have Deku continuing to go to school, where Deku would pretty much just be 14. You know, he has like the little 10 months, or no, where Deku now at like, let's say, actually I said that this all happened about 3 months before. We're gonna say that it happens 10 months before what I originally said. So think Deku just turned 14 years old and they just started their 8th grade. They just started 8th grade. So the incident with his grandfather happens about 1 month into it. And 1 more month into it, Deku is finally able to return to school after all his injuries healed up. They then have a funeral for Deku's grandfather, where Deku just is pretty sad. I mean, his grandfather was similar to a father figure for Deku. And so Deku just goes to school, where one day when Deku, you know, after school, he decides that, you know, he's going to go to that shooting range where his and his grandfather always used to go to. And as Deku would head over to that direction, he would see a man wearing like a weird little trench coat. As, you know, Deku would look at him and not really pay too much attention to this. As out of nowhere, the man would quite literally jump up out of where he was sitting at, and he would proceed to walk into the range with Deku. As Deku would just look at the man, thinking that it's strange, and go over to vent his anger by shooting a bunch of targets. Deku would hit perfect bullseyes every time, and the man would just start to think that, yeah, the information was all correct. As he would walk over to Deku and basically ask him if he can have a moment of his time, Deku would say sure, why not, as they would go outside into like an alleyway area, where the man would then look towards Deku's direction, as Deku pretty much has nothing on him, but he isn't scared because Deku's pretty good with hand-to-hand combat, even though he only has one arm. As the man would just tell Deku if he wants money. Deku's eyes would kind of just look up, as, you know, they're still in debt. And he would say, how would I get this money and how much? As the man would then begin to explain, good, I have his attention. As he would then say, I'm willing to offer you $2 million. $2 million. As, you know, Deku would just be like, what? And the man would just look at Deku as he would say, 2 million yen. Yeah, because it's yen, not dollars. Is 2 million yen the same as $1 million? Let's just say that 1 million converted to yen is what he's offering Deku. And so we would then basically just have Deku's like looking at the man as he just says, what do I have to do? The man would then begin to explain to Deku what it is that he has to do, as he would offer Deku a job to assassinate somebody. Deku would be told that if he handles a problem for him, that Deku would be given that money as well as all the weapons that he would need to carry out the mission. Deku would say why this is that he wants to pay him so much money just to, you know, beat someone up, as the man would look at Deku and say, oh no, I need you to kill this man. As Deku's eyes would widen and he would just be thinking about things. His morale wouldn't really let him. His code of conduct. But he would then be thinking about how his mother has sacrificed so much for him, that if Deku wasn't able to do this for her, she would continue to have to work all these shifts in order to pay for all the things that they have to, as well as his schooling, and all these thoughts would simply just begin to race inside of Deku's mind, thinking that he'll never be able to pay his mother back for all that she does for him. As Deku would simply look down at the ground and then look up at the man as he would say, I'll do it. When do you need it done? As the man would then explain the mission to him, he would basically tell him that the reason they need to get rid of him isn't important, but I'm going to be telling you guys anyways. The broker pretty much got done extremely dirty by Wolfram, and in case you guys don't know who that is, it's that one villain from the first My Hero Academia movie, the one that controlled the metal and All Might and Deku to fight against tag teaming. Alright, except he's not going to be having that little quirk amplifying thing, and so Wolfram isn't going to be that broken. Deku would pretty much just be given a location of Wolfram, told that he should be around this area, as Deku would end up basically doing a little bit of research for the following days, where Deku would end up basically just be giving a little bit of a wacky suit given to him, and the thing that he was mostly given was a bunch of weapons. Now, as for Deku's first suit, it's actually going to be up on screen right now. It's not going to be nothing crazy or special. It's kind of just going to be like a little bit of a helmet, as well as this little puffer jacket or something like that, with like a little bit of gun holsters on each leg. And that's pretty much all Deku's suit is. It's gonna be like a pretty much have you guys ever shopped on Wish? The Wish version of Deadshot's costume. That's all it is. And so Deku would get ready. About 1 week would pass by until the day of his mission would come by, and Deku's having second thoughts. He's never He's never hit anything other than a target. And Deku would just be thinking about this as he doesn't know if he'll be ready to do what he has to do. But Deku would have his oh my god, well, what's that word called? His will reinvigorated or something like that, as he would basically just decide that he has to do what he has to do. That this man is a villain either way, and so he's going to be helping the world by getting rid of this man, as that's what Deku would chop it up to. And Deku, basically being desperate for money, would just accept, as he's basically sitting at the top of a building where Wolfram is with his other two lackeys. The guy who can transform into a giant monster, and the guy who has like these sharp like blades for hands or something like that. As Deku was just sitting at the top of the roof, he would grab a sniper as he would aim it right at Wolfram's head, and Deku would hesitate for a moment until Deku would pretty much just get the money in his account. And Deku, seeing all these euros, would think about how this is going to change his life. If he doesn't do this, he's going to be hunted down, and his mother and himself will just be put in a horrible spot. So Deku would close his eyes and pull the trigger. The bullet would travel as it would ricochet off of a wall, hitting Wolfram's head, causing his body to drop down onto the ground as warm blood would begin to spill all over the ground, just turning into a giant puddle. And Deku would hide as he would begin to run off of the building and jump from building to building, pretty much doing parkour until he gets far enough where he knows that nobody would have realized it was him. After this, Deku would send a message saying that it's done, as the man would send him a thumbs up emoji, and Deku would simply just think that how he's going to explain this to his mother. As after this, Deku would pretty much end up going home, as, you know, he takes off the suit, he gets home like looking really like, it's kind of bittersweet, but he would put on a straight face and just be like, "Mom, we're rich." As Inko would look at Deku, she would say, "What do you mean, sweetie?" And Deku would look at her as he would say, "Mom, this guy, he gave me $1 million, Mom. I saved a millionaire." As Inko would look at Deku and just like kind of her eyes would widen. And for the first time ever, she would give a big bright smile as Deku would show her his bank account with $1 million, dollars converted to yen. As she would just, her eyes would widen and she would say, "Oh my God, we can finally pay off the debt and get a house." And all these thoughts would just start rising through Inko's mind as Deku would say, "Yeah, we'll do all of it, Mom, and then more. We'll get out of this, and you'll never have to work again. I can do the working from now on, Mom. You can finally relax. I'm going to finally pay you back for everything." As Inko would give Deku the biggest hug. She would hug him as her gratitude couldn't be expressed more. She would start smothering Deku with kisses as all you can hear was, you know what I mean? And Deku's just sitting there like, "Mom, thank you." As you know, they're having a pretty good moment. And Deku would just be thinking that, this couldn't be the extent of this. Maybe if he was to do it again, then he can get more money. But as he thinks this thought would just get wiped from his mind as he's like, "No, I can't do that. I already did. One time was enough." As he would go on to pretty much pay off that little surgery and pay off the arm, as it would literally be about 1/4 of the money. After this, they would pretty much just end up paying for a house, as that would equate to another good portion of the rest of the check, as now they would have spent 2/4 of all the money that Deku had completely. And so Deku would realize that the rest of the money would only last for about a year. So after that, his mother would have to go back to working, sadly. And so Inko would just kind of smile at Deku, telling him not to worry. At least now she can only work one job, and she can now pay for everything. Deku won't have to work a part-time shift anymore. She can even pay for his little lessons now. Deku would smile, thinking that that's not enough. His mother deserves a better life. As Deku would simply just hit up the same guy who hired him for that and ask him if he has any other jobs for him. He would basically tell Deku that he doesn't, but that if he wants, he can go on the dark web and simply search, because there's always going to be somebody hiring. Now Deku would look around as he would see that there's multiple jobs and basically just end up reading these descriptions. It would make him sick to his stomach as Deku would throw up at the thought of having to do what he already did once more. As for the next following nights, Deku would have sleepless nights, and Deku would just be thinking about what he did to that man. Yeah, he was a villain, but Deku's like simple, good-natured person just doesn't let Deku sleep at night. You know what I mean? And so after this, Deku would kind of hold off on this for the next couple of months, as it would be about 4 months where he would notice that their money supply would slowly start going down. They made a bunch of purchases of things that they never had before, and doing this would actually cause their money supply to go down quite a lot. Deku's mother would realize what they did, and they'd be in a pretty tough spot once more. After this, Deku would decide that he's gonna have to help them out. And so Deku would just tell his mother that maybe he can do something for money. Maybe they can take the rest of the money and gamble it, as Inko would just be thinking that that's a crazy idea. But Deku would basically just tell Inko that he's gonna do it, and Inko would just be like, what? Like, you're gonna gamble it all? Deku would basically end up during the nighttime accepting a job offer where he would actually be getting paid a grand total of, let's say, 2 million for the assassination of another villain. Now, this villain would be taken care of because of the simple fact that he is a mob boss, and a very big one at that. So the organizer of another mob basically told Deku to do this other job, and so Deku accepts. He would basically end up having a scene very, very reminiscent to the one where from Suicide Squad, where Deku's just at the top of a building, and we would have the mob boss get out with a bunch of cars and a bunch of people surrounding him, and Deku would only have the span of 10 seconds to shoot the man before his time is up. Of course, he's not going to sit there and be like, yup, you got to double it, because Deku's not ready to do all that just yet. But Deku would basically take the shot as the man would drop, and Deku would get out of their area, basically continuing to have another job go by swiftly. Now, after this, Deku would receive his payment, as the very next day, without telling Inko, he basically just took all the money, and it acted as if he went to a gambling place where he gambled all and basically ended up multiplying their money back to where they're not poor anymore. Inko would say, "You are so lucky," as she would hug Deku once more, saying that now this time they're going to be smart with their money. And Deku would say sure they are, as Deku would ask Inko if he can take half of it, maybe gamble again, as she would say, "Do you have an addiction?" And Deku would say, no, where Deku would then proceed to take more and more and more jobs. And during the following months, up until the day where the Sludge Villain incident would happen, Deku would take more and more jobs, pretty much making a name for himself, finally understanding how everything works in the business that Deku's getting himself into. And after all this time, Deku would actually be able to buy himself an entire cybernetic arm similar to the one that the Winter Soldier has, except it's not going to be like his, where it has like a star on it. It's just going to be a metal arm that by where the fingers are at, it's silver, but Deku's always going to wear gloves and hoodies over it, so it kind of covers it. And so as for Deku's body type, he's actually has like around the same body shape as Deadshot, and Deku actually is around Ida's height, so he's pretty tall. He doesn't even look like a kid when it comes to what Deku's physique is. And so after all these months, Deku has definitely made a name for himself in the dark web. Deku's getting multiple job requests to basically take out heroes. Now, up until this point, Deku's only taken out about 5 heroes, corrupt ones at that, the ones that basically are letting crime keep going. And so that's why Deku's able to bring himself into that. But a job offer would be made to him, which would be different than the rest. It would literally be 100 million yen if Deku was to basically take out a real hero. Somebody who wouldn't do Deku wrong, but somebody who is actually a great hero at that, but that they need to get rid of for them to basically continue their operations. And so Deku would end up having to take out this hero. Now, I don't even feel like thinking of a hero or who it is that he takes out, but let's just say he takes out a pretty cool one. He had a good morale, good compass to pretty much lead him to, be a hero and do the right thing at all moments. But Deku, when he took out this man, he simply just couldn't help but think about what he took away from the man. He took away his family's rights to having a hero in the family, the mother and child. Had he had one, he took those away. Now they'll never get to have a father. And Deku would puke as he would just think about how awful he is. But after all these months, his moral compass would start just kind of getting more and more blurred. Where at this point, Inko and Deku's money kind of just keeps growing, where Inko just thinks that Deku has so much luck. And Deku would end up pretty much just telling his mother that the reason that he wins so much is because of his eye quirk. That, he uses that to his advantage without telling anybody. And seeing as you can't really tell that Deku's using his quirk, Deku is able to win every time. And so Inko just thinks that, that might be a little corrupted, but, it's not that bad. They're taking that money from people who have loads of it, so that's what Inko and Deku chalk it up to. So now they get to live this little fancy life where at this point Inko would ask Deku if he wants to go to UA, and at this point Deku would simply say that maybe, as Inko would sit down with Deku and pretty much just tell him that, well, if he does want to go to UA, then she's going to have to tell him something that she's been hiding for quite some time. She would tell Deku that, has he ever wondered who his father was? As Deku would just think about this and be like, no, not really. As she would begin to explain to Deku that his father is actually a pro hero. And Deku, after hearing this, would kind of just be like, pro? He would be questioning what's going on and why, if he's a pro hero, he hasn't been there for them. If he was a pro hero, he could have helped them with their money. And Deku wouldn't have had to do everything that he did. But Inko would then basically proceed to say, yeah, and he's a top 20 hero. As Deku would just have rage boiling inside of him. Internally, he would be screaming, thinking that whoever this is, Deku is going to get revenge unless they have a pretty good reason. As Inko would begin to explain how everything happened, that Snipe is his father. And Deku's world would kind of just begin to crumble as he would just think, Snipe? He has his room filled with posters of Snipe, action figures, and Deku would simply just have one thought in his mind. My idol? It's been my dad this whole time? That deadbeat. As he would simply just clench his fist, as Inko can't see what's going on, but Deku's enraged. And he would simply just ask Inko to go on and tell him what happened. Inko would do just that, as she would basically confess all that pretty much happened to Deku. As Deku, learning this, would pretty much vow to be the one who takes care of Snipe. As Deku would pretty much just be getting angrier and angrier, and end up going up to his room, as he would just end up looking at his mother and saying that he doesn't want to become a pro hero. As Inko's just sitting there like, oh, well, I mean, do whatever you need to, Deku. As at this point, they have enough money where Deku can live comfortably for the rest of his life, and generations after him, if he decides to have kids, could as well. But Deku, at this point, it's not even about the money. Deku hasn't taken any jobs for months, and at this point he's still attending the same school that he's gone to in canon, arriving there in a limo. Now, Deku would be in the back of the classroom where, the teacher would come in and be like, I know you only go heroes. Everybody would get excited, of course, and Bakugo would go on to tell everybody that they're all just going to be some D-listers to some broken, hero. As, everybody gets angry, and the teacher never actually ends up even saying that Deku wants to go to UA. So Bakugo wouldn't get angry at Deku or catch him after class. Bakugo simply goes off to the arcade with his friends, and Deku never ends up running into the sludge villain. Instead, it's another kid which All Might ends up saving, but the kid doesn't latch onto his leg or anything because he does have a quirk. It's a flame one, because why not? And let's say it's the son of Hisashi, because why not? And so, that happens. And then afterwards, we would essentially just have Deku going back home, where now Deku is just continuing to pretty much wonder how he's going to basically take out Snipe, because that's kind of just been the only thing that's been going through his mind. Deku and his mother now have enough money to live off of for the rest of their lives. And Deku at this point, honestly, his moral compass is kind of faded, where Deku is a little bit on the money hungry side, and now Deku doesn't care if he has enough money to live on for the next couple of generations. Deku wants more. He wants to take on more jobs and see just how strong and how far he can push the limits of being an assassin. And so Deku would do just that. He would take on more and more jobs until one day Deku, after the point where, until for the next following 10 months, because after the school and sludge villain incident, they would pretty much have more time. Until at this point, Deku ends up taking so many jobs, taking out so many villains and heroes alike, not really caring about what you are, whether you're a hero doing the right thing, whether you're the mother of four or anything. Deku just needs an adrenaline rush at this point. Deku's moral compass has gone so far off the rails that the only person who Deku really cares about is his mother, Inko. The only person that Deku would give anything up to protect. And so we would just basically have Deku going on to, for the 10 months just kind of complete more and more and more jobs until afterwards Deku would finally get a little bit of a costume upgrade, that which I'm going to be putting up on screen. Now, this time it's going to be the exact same costume that you guys have seen in the thumbnail of the beginning of the video. The Suicide Squad one with the white mask and the red thing with the eye. That little eye thing is still going to serve the same purpose as it does in, you know, Deadshot's book. And as for the 10 months, it's not as if Deku just always does silent missions where he takes people out covertly. No, Deku at times has to rush in and take out a group of like 50 men armed, all of them armed, and take them all out physically. So when I say that Deku's suit is durable and Deku is extremely efficient at hand-to-hand combat, please believe me, this man Deku is correct. And he's even stronger than normal Deadshot because of the fact that he lives in a superhuman society where it's kind of not funny how strong normal people are. Not only that, but he has to fight against quirked people on the daily, now that Deku's taking jobs almost every other day. And so Deku has developed a little bit of a legendary name for himself, being a legendary marksman who can take out anybody that you would wish for. Now Deku has a little bit of a different compass when it comes to taking out heroes. He doesn't take out any of the top 10 heroes because, as he views it, the world needs it to stay afloat. And so the only reason he would ever be able to do it was if he was offered a great deal amount of money. And so we would, of course, basically just have Deku looking through his job list for the day, where he would just basically be thinking about what it is that he's going to be taking for the job now. He would see a message that pretty much just says All Might. As Deku would click on it, just kind of smirking, like laughing, just getting ready to see what kind of offer they have for him, like just to see like some random villain probably offer him like $1 million just to take care of All Might, which of course Deku was kind of just going to laugh at and ignore. But instead, when he clicked on the video, he saw so many zeros that Deku like just immediately thought that it was a joke. And then afterwards, he basically received another email which pretty much showed him a confirmation. It literally just showed him the fact that it's not fake. He pretty much asked somebody to decrypt it for him just to see if this was a lie. And so after this, he would realize that this man wasn't lying. Deku would answer back as he would say, "What do you need me to do to All Might?" As you know, he would receive an email back just basically telling him that, or no, not an email. This is when he would call the number. As you know, he would talk to All For One, as All For One would basically just tell Deku that he wants him to handle All Might, that he's heard good things about him, and that if he can do this job for him, he'll give him all the money in the world. Now, Deku would literally just be thinking that he needs to take this mission. This might be the most hard and entertaining thing he'll ever do. Not only that, but think of all the zeros that would be in his account. Deku would immediately respond that when does he need it done, as All For One would reply to him that he needs it done on this certain day, pretty much telling him a location and sending it straight to Deku's area. Where it's at this point that all the students of UA already did their quirk assessment stuff, and the USJ attack is coming in about 1 week. As it's at this point that Deku pretty much has 1 week to prepare himself for this event. All For One would send him half of the money, telling him that he's sure he won't fail, and Deku would just be greeted to all of these zeros. And honestly, if that was the full payment for this job, Deku would be happy, but there's still the other half of it, and Deku would just be like extremely like lost for words, just thinking that this is going to be the greatest thing he'll ever do. As you know, he wouldn't even be thinking about the fact that he's gonna, kind of turn Hero Society over its head, but Deku's just thinking about the money. As it's at this point that we would essentially just have Deku's sense of morality gone. He doesn't care as long as there's enough zeros in there for Deku to justify what he has to do to anybody. As at this point, the money overweighs. If the money overweighs the prize, he'll always agree. As after this, we would basically just have Deku arriving to the League of Villains bar, where we would see Shigaraki and we would also see Kurogiri. Now, this is when Shigaraki would walk over to Deku as he would say, "You must be Deadshot. I've heard many things about you." As you know, we would then just have Deku saying, "Oh yeah? Hope it's good things." As he would be wearing the mask, and he would then basically ask him for a drink, as Kurogiri would look towards Deku's direction, and then towards Shigaraki, as Shigaraki would basically just say, "Sure, give the man a drink." as Deku would sit down by the bar and pretty much just look at Shigaraki as he would say, "So, what's your story?" Shigaraki would go over to Deku as he would pretty much put all 4 fingers on Deku's back and pretty much just have 1 finger off of Deku's shoulder. As Deku would look at Shigaraki and ask him why he doesn't place the full hand on his shoulder. I mean, doesn't he trust him? As Shigaraki would say that he can't. That the reason that he doesn't is because if he was to do that, Deku would die. And Deku would just start laughing as he takes a sip of the sake. After this, we would then basically just have Deku like looking at Shigaraki as he would say, "So, what's the deal? What's the plan?" Shigaraki would explain what it is and he would say, "And there's no backing out." As he would basically just like show Deku that one of his fingers is on him, Deku would finish taking a sip of his drink. As in an instant, Deku would elbow Shigaraki, throw his gun into the air as he would grab a knife out of his pocket and pretty much hold the knife right to Shigaraki's throat and grab the gun with his other hand as he aims it straight at Shigaraki's head and tells him that if he was to ever threaten Deku's life ever again, he'll put a bullet in his head that will have his name carved into it. As Shigaraki would be trembling, Kurogiri would not have anything, like he wouldn't be able to do a thing, as Deku would just look at Shigaraki and Kurogiri and basically tell them not to ever test him again. After this, we would then have All For One's voice come over the TV as it would say, "Put him down." And Deku would do just that, as he would say, "Well, maybe control your lackeys next time." All For One would tell Shigaraki to basically respect him, as he would say that he's going to be the one who takes care of All Might in the first place. As Shigaraki would just grit his teeth thinking that there's no way that this guy can take All Might out. Even if he could take him out, there's no way he's stronger or faster than All Might. From what he could tell, he's a normal human with a bunch of toys. As he would say that to All For One, and All For One would simply tell Shigaraki not to worry about that. As Deku didn't show him his full strength, he showed him his normal human strength, superhuman strength, or at least, but he never showed him the strength that the other arm has. That arm is very powerful. And so we would just basically have Deku chilling there the day of the USJ attack, where everybody would get rounded up and Kurogiri would teleport them all to the location of the USJ as all the people would be in there. Now, when it comes to them all entering the USJ, it would actually pretty much go as it does in canon, where everybody would pretty much just begin to get teleported around, and everybody would just kind of start freaking out as Tsuyu and Mineta would land in the boat area, and we would have Asashi's son, because he's part of UA, because why not, with his flame quirk landing there as well, as we would then basically just have everything kind of go as it does in canon. The Hero 13 would pretty much get done dirty by her own quirk, and Ida would then of course go after to pretty much warn All Might that they're under attack. Kurogiri would get pretty angry at that, and Deku would simply just kind of scoff at that notion, thinking that this whole operation could have gone smoothly, but then looking up and realizing that All Might, he's not even there. After this, Deku would look at Shigaraki as he would ask what the meaning of this is, and asking him if this is a setup, and telling him that if it is, he's going to be wishing that it wasn't. As Shigaraki would say that All Might was supposed to be here, he would get angry as he would be like, "Kurogiri, why is All Might not here?" Kurogiri would teleport over to Shigaraki as he would say, "I don't know, master." As afterwards, we would then basically just have Deku we would essentially just have Deku sitting there as he is essentially just going to sit there and wait. And at this point that Aizawa would pretty much rush up on in there, as we would basically just have Aizawa rushing in and taking out a bunch of villains. As Aizawa would then turn his attention towards Deku, who's pretty much just going to be sitting there as, he lights something up real quick and he just puts it in his mouth. As he proceeds to essentially just put his mask back down and then proceeds to throw the thing into the water. As Deku would look towards Aizawa's direction, crush his knuckles and crack his neck, as he would then turn towards Aizawa and say, "Alright, let's get this over with." He would grab a knife from one of his attachments on his leg, or a pocket knife holster from his pants, and he would then rush at Aizawa, who Aizawa would actually throw his scarf right at Deku. Now Deku would dodge the scarf and jump over it, knowing that the scarf was going to come right back toward Aizawa, as Aizawa would basically catch it, thinking that this guy definitely has some skill. He would rush towards Deku's direction, as Deku would throw a punch, a kick, elbow, and he would kick Aizawa away, as Aizawa would stand back up and rush at Deku, but Deku would dodge dodge each and every single one of the blows, as Deku would then proceed to throw another kick right at Aizawa, which would send him flying upwards, as Deku would then use one of his holsters that he pretty much has attached to his arm, as he would shoot a bullet straight at Aizawa's chest. But Aizawa would actually have a bulletproof vest on, which would cause Aizawa to pretty much get flung back and not bleed. This is when Deku would smile, thinking that he almost got a little ahead of himself. He wants to take his time with him, as he would rush back over towards Aizawa, as Shigaraki simply watches, telling him to end it now. But Deku would be taking his sweet time with it, not really caring about Shigaraki's order, saying that he's not the boss of him. As Deku would continue fighting against Aizawa, kind of just having a little bit of a fun time, just letting his adrenaline rush. You know, Deku simply doing it because that's all it is to him. Aizawa is nothing but an adrenaline rush to him. As Deku would continue the fight with Aizawa, as Aizawa would land a couple of hits here and there, but Deku would be the one who mainly is landing everything. Deku would kick Aizawa away, as he would flip him back up and do a backflip, as he would shoot a bunch of bullets straight at Aizawa. This is when Deku would simply just decide that it's about time that he, you know, handles Aizawa at this point. As Aizawa would simply stand back up, but right as he does this, Deku would take a gun right off of his back, as he would rush at Aizawa and pretty much proceed to bash the gun straight into Aizawa's head. As Aizawa would pretty much drop down to the ground, but Deku would then throw the gun into the air, as he would punch Aizawa in the face, causing him to get pretty much he would lose his vision, as he would then grab a knife, stab it into Aizawa's shoulder, and pretty much shoot him in the back of the head once he catches the gun that he threw into the air. And he would shoot a bullet straight into Aizawa's head. Aizawa's body would drop down to the ground, as we would then basically just have Aizawa die. Deku at this point would simply just sit back down and say, "All Might better get here. You have 30 minutes. As All Might would basically finally have gotten the thing from Ida, and All Might would arrive about 2 minutes later. Deku, seeing All Might bust in through those doors, would smile, as All Might would rush at a bunch of the other villains who were basically fighting against his students, and he would save all of them, which would take him a whole 1 minute to do. After this, All Might would land right in front of Shigaraki, as he would look towards Deku's direction and see Aizawa on the ground, thinking, "Who did this to you?" He would go over to Aizawa, as he would pick him up and basically just cradle him in his arms, as All Might would get enraged. He would then look towards Deku's direction, as Deku would smirk, and Deku would get like rushed at by All Might. But this is when the Nomu would arrive, as the Nomu would rush at All Might, and they would both get into a fight in which Kurogiri and Shigaraki don't assist the Nomu whatsoever. They want to see if the Nomu is able to do it, and if it doesn't, then they have this guy here to handle it, or so All For One says. Even if he doesn't handle it, Shigaraki can teleport out of there at any moment. And so we would then basically have Deku sitting back, as he would watch the Nomu fight against All Might. As All Might and the Nomu would go at it for a solid 5 minutes, giving the actual heroes enough time to arrive at the USJ, by the time that All Might is barely able to punch the Nomu out of the USJ. And it's at this point that Deku would basically crack his neck, as he would just realize that, yeah, it's up to him. He would aim his gun straight at All Might's head, as All Might turned towards his direction, pretty tired after just landing that final blow. But then Deku would look up, as he would see the pro hero Snipe up there. Deku would then immediately turn his aim towards Snipe's direction, as he would shoot the bullet, and Snipe would shoot one right back, causing both the bullets to hit each other mid-air, causing them to collide. And Deku would then basically turn his attentions away from All Might and begin to rush right at Snipe's direction, as a portal would pretty much begin to engulf, in which Shigaraki would basically begin to teleport out of there, and Deku would actually get teleported out of there by Kurogiri as well, as Kurogiri would grab Deku and teleport him out of there before he got to rush at Snipe. And Snipe would shoot a bullet at Deku, which would not land because Deku was able to dodge it, but Deku shot a bullet which actually hit Snipe right on his shoulder. As Snipe fell to the ground, it hurt pretty badly because Deku's bullets are actually encarved with poison, so Snipe needed to get rushed to a hospital. He survives because plot. Actually, no, it's not even because of plot. I mean, poison in a bullet. If it shoots you like around your shoulder, you're not going to die. The poison was treated by the hospitals, and the wound was healed by Recovery Girl. That being said, this is when they would all be teleported right in front of All For One, as All For One would be enraged just looking at Deku, as he would say, "You had him. I saw everything. You could have killed All Might." as Deku would say not to worry, that he can handle it next time, as All For One would simply tell him that there won't be a next time. The next time, All Might is dead. As you know, All For One would look at Deku, as you know, Deku would quite literally just be told that he has his mother in custody. As you know, Deku would be just basically be shown a live feed of All For One having cameras inside of his home. As All For One would just look at Deku and tell him that if he fails again, Inko dies. Deku would get angry, but wouldn't be able to say a word, as All For One would tell him, now, bow down and put your head on the ground as I step on it. As All For One would cause Deku to pretty much go down on the ground and pretty much put his hands and knees on the ground, as he would plead for forgiveness from All For One, telling him not to hurt his mother, as that's the only thing that matters to Deku. As Deku would pretty much just be humiliated, worse than he ever has in his entire life, as All For One would proceed to look at him and say, good boy. This is when he would say, you work for me, is that understood? I don't want to see another failure. Deku would get enraged, as you know, he would just look down at the ground and his vision blurs from how angry he's getting. But All For One would just look at Deku, as he would put his hand over his head and he would quite literally begin to charge a quirk into Deku's head, as now Deku is pretty much gets another quirk implanted into him, which is essentially going to be a quirk that allows Deku to have Snipe's quirk. Now you guys may be wondering, yo, what do you mean Snipe's quirk? Or it's not actually going to be Snipe's quirk, but it's basically going to be something very similar except more OP, which pretty much allows Deku to never miss a shot. He has homing with every single bullet that he now shoots. Not only that, but Deku can now create his own weapons. Deku has an ability to create weapons now, not like creation like Momo's quirk, but something that only allows him to create weapons. Now that's pretty broken in and of itself, but nothing completely, you know, unable to be beaten, you know what I mean? And so All For One would then look at Deku, as he would say, if he fails again, she dies. Now Deku was pissed. He's gonna kill All For One now for threatening Deku, embarrassing him, and holding his mother as hostage. Well, she's not exactly being held at hostage because she's back at the house, but All For One has men near the house telling Deku that if he goes over there and tries to save her, she dies. And so Deku is left with like virtually no options, and so at this point the heroes pretty much just be given like a 1 week break after the USJ event happened, and Deku during that 1 week would just contemplate his options, realizing that if he wants to take out All For One, he might need the help of the heroes, as he would end up basically sending a message to the school of UA, or more specifically a message to Nezu, where they would arrange a meeting during the day of the USJ or the UA Sports Festival, or right after it, you know what I mean? Bakugo would end up winning, as Todoroki is not using his fire, and afterwards they would basically create a plan that would pretty much cause them to take out All For One. Now I'm going to be explaining the plan now. The plan is essentially going to be that Deku is going to be inside of the league, pretty much just trying to see when their next attack is going to be. And so Deku's going to be attacking the league internally. Deku's pretty much going to be in charge of taking out Shigaraki and Kurogiri, and Deku's also going to be in charge of giving them info. So it's kind of going to be like a spy for UA. And in turn, UA will pretty much be held, giving him a helping hand. And All For One, or no, All Might would be pretty angry at Deku, seeing as, you know, he's the reason that Aizawa died. But if he gets to take out the world's greatest menace, All For One, then Aizawa's sacrifice would have been worth it. So All Might contains himself, and pretty much just they all pretty much just get ready for the raid arc, which they will have in the forest, because that's pretty much what's going to be happening. From here, we're kind of just gonna have a time skip where all the students have their little their time to pretty much get ready and have their little internships. During this time, Deku works on his hand-to-hand combat, as well as working to master this new quirk that Deku was just given. And so Deku would end up actually mastering it during the 2 weeks that he has, because after that they also have the finals, and then they have to make their way towards the forest. So Deku definitely does have enough time to, you know, practice these new abilities that he was given. After this, All Might and everybody would go towards the forest, where Deku would get teleported the day of the Vanguard Action Squad trying to kidnap Bakugo. And All For One is actually going to not be present, but Shigaraki and Deku are also not going to be present as well. Deku remained by the base with Shigaraki and Kurogiri, and he's going to be the one who's in charge of taking care of Shigaraki. Now, when it comes to Shigaraki, Deku and Shigaraki would be in a room together, as Deku would basically just be making small talk with Shigaraki, silently pretty much loading his weapon and, slowly aiming it towards Shigaraki's direction. They would just be having a conversation in which Shigaraki's acting all high and mighty, acting as if he's way better than Deku, and Deku's getting pretty sick and tired of this, so he would pretty much aim his wrist right at Shigaraki's head, and essentially basically Shigaraki would begin to yell Kurogiri's name. As Kurogiri would warp over there, Deku would immediately tell Kurogiri that he needs to teleport them all right back to the forest, which all the Vanguard Action Squad is at. So Kurogiri would do just that, as he would tell Deku to not do anything hasty, but Deku would pull the trigger and Shigaraki's body would drop down to the ground, as Kurogiri would get enraged and he would begin to warp Deku, as he would shoot his portal at Deku, trying to rip him in half. But Deku would shoot a bullet straight towards the middle of Kurogiri's, weak spot, as he would just basically be saying that he knew that he had to have some sort of weak spot. It's all about knowing where it is, as Deku can say that he can see it way better than the normal eye can. Kurogiri would get pretty angry, and Deku would kill Kurogiri as well, as after this, All Might All For One would actually lose all contact with the Vanguard Action Squad and Kurogiri and Shigaraki. So he would basically end up teleporting there after all the villains were basically handled. And seeing as all the heroes were aware that the villains were going to attack on this day, they were able to account for them. And seeing as Toga and Toga, Dabi, Spinner weren't present, they had even less backup. So when it came down to helping them take out the rest of the villains that basically arrived, it was literally a walk in the park. They had it so easy. They had it planned so perfectly. They took out Muscular easily. All Might was able to handle him. And so All For One would teleport there, simply thinking that if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. He might as well kill All Might himself. And when he teleports there, he would teleport to the last known location of Kurogiri and Shigaraki, as All Might would be standing there, and he would just be thinking that All Might was the one who did that. Deku would be faking a battle against All Might, and he would basically just turn towards Deku's direction, as Deku pretty much is flung out of there by All Might. Purposefully, Deku lets it happen, as Deku's flung a pretty good decent distance away, as All Might and All For One then proceed to have their final battle. And it would pretty much go as it does in canon. All Might slowly starts losing, All For One ends up telling him about Shigaraki, and Deku pretty much just ends up kind of watching from afar with his rifle out, as All Might defeats All For One. But afterwards, Deku would shoot a bullet straight into All For One's head, basically saying that son of a, you guys know the word, won't be allowed to live. As All Might, after seeing that, would pretty much rush at Deku, as in this version, he actually rushes at Deku, and Deku doesn't even fight against it. He doesn't shoot at All Might or anything. He pretty much is just happy. Even if he was to go to prison, he doesn't care, as long as his mother is fine now. And Deku would pretty much just be put in a maximum security Tartarus cell, where he would then be approached by government officials about 1 week later, where they pretty much end up telling Deku if he would be willing to join their team, a team comprised of a bunch of villains who pretty much are going to be doing good for the world, similar to the Suicide Squad. Deku would become an anti-hero for Japan, where Deku would proceed to take out some of the worst villains ever, such as Redestro and Overhaul, shutting down their entire organizations by themselves. And Deku would be the leader of this operation, the leader of the squad. Deku would call it the Suicide Squad. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where What If Deku Was Deadshot is going to be ending. I hope you guys did enjoy this series, seeing as it was not normal. It was not one of the normal ones where it totally goes along with the My Hero Academia plot or story. It was more of a villain Deku with a little bit of a redemption at the end, but not really, because he's still going to be doing what he does best, which is pretty much being a mercenary, taking out corrupt heroes and corrupt villains, doing what he was doing already, but this time just kind of being allowed his freedom for doing what he needs to do. After that, Deku's name would be announced publicly, where Deku would now be a hero for hire. And yeah, that's pretty much where the story of What If Deku Was Deadshot wraps up. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure you guys go down below and smash that like button, obliterate that like button, as well as hit that like oh no, I already said that. No, yeah, Texas smash that like button, guys, as well as subscribe, seeing as a large majority of you guys actually aren't subscribed to the channel. It'd mean a lot if you guys could get me to 25k by the end of actually no, let's go for 30k by the end of the year. All right, we can do it, guys. Xehther army can get 30k by the end of the year. That's going to be the goal for the next month. Let's do it. We can do it. I believe in you guys. But with that being said, it has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.